up, you guppies! The enemy is evolving and invading our lands. The time to strike is now. We need you to deploy our elite force of mosquito fish and neutralize the enemy. Mosquitoes will breed in many backyard-standing water bodies such as green swimming pools, ponds, and fountains. Mosquito fish are a natural method of control and will stop the enemy before they evolve into fully fledged fighting machines. This will reduce the mosquito population and promote safer communities for all of Hillsborough County residents. Report to htfl.gov/mosquitoes for more information on how you can prevent mosquitoes. Good luck, guppies. Make me proud.
Welcome to a meeting of your Planning Commission, the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Welcome to the June 10th, 2024 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. For those attending in person and wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. To minimize feedback in the audio, all online participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for the local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I will ask Commissioner Kona to lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. All please rise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please bow your heads. We are thankful for this day you have given us and its blessings, its opportunities, and its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We ask for strength and guidance throughout the day's proceedings to help us make decisions that are in the best interest of the entire community. Please help us recognize our differences and mobilize them for the good of the community and its common goal. In his name we pray, amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, sir. With that, I will ask the clerk to please go ahead and call roll.
Good afternoon. Bowden?
Here.
Buzza?
Here.
Cardenas?
Here.
Kona?
Here.
Fernandez? Kress?
Here.
Loke? Saria?
Here.
Sieben?
Here.
Orton?
Here.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Joseph?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
All right. I think everybody who signed up to speak signed up for action items. So we will move on to number 3 on our agenda, action items. And 3A is the appointment of the TPO Citizens Advisory Committee representative, and the presenter is Melissa Zornita.
Yes, as I informed you all about a couple of months ago, we had a vacancy in the position that the Planning Commission gets to appoint to the Transportation Planning Organization's Citizens Advisory Committee. The process is that we solicit for volunteers, and we're thrilled that we have one volunteer who's here today, Mr. Carter. His application was attached to the agenda item, but he is here, and it's been the typical practice to allow the applicants to say a few words. And so at this time, I'd invite Mr. Carter to come forward and introduce himself to us.
Turn your mic on.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Michael Carter. I am retired from the human resources profession. In fact, part of my career was spent right here in human resources on the 17th floor. 5 wonderful years, stressful years, but I loved every minute of it. And so when I saw there was an opportunity to volunteer to serve, I jumped at it because I've done some other things, such as president of my homeowners association in Brandon, being secretary for CDC for a little while, and part of the county that's South County, sort of. So I'm willing to learn how I can effectively serve. So here I am. Thank you.
Thank you, and with that, it would be at the Planning Commission's discretion whether or not to approve the appointment.
Isn't there supposed to be a recommendation?
It is recommended to the Planning Commission that you appoint Michael Carter to the TPO Citizen Advisory Committee. Thank you.
All right. That was a shout out to staff who has to do that all the time, by the way. All right, so we need to make a recommendation to appoint Mr. Carter to the board. That would need a motion. Yes, Commissioner Buzzin?
I'll move that we approve the candidate.
All right. We have a motion.
Second that motion.
All right, we have a motion approved by Commissioner Buzzer, a second to that motion by Commissioner Bowden. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Not seeing any, would all signify their approval by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. All right. So next up we have, thank you for your service, by the way, and welcome aboard, Mr. Carter. Next up we have item 3B, a whole lot of City of Tampa Land Development Code text amendments. All right. Emily, are you doing all of them?
Yes, sir.
I'll let you go through them and then we'll stop at each one and take a vote on each one. We're going to vote on each one, right? Yeah.
Yes, each one will be opened individually. The city of staff has a presentation, staff will give their recommendation, and then you all will vote.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff on the Tampa Land Development Code text amendments, and I will go ahead and give it to the city of staff, and then I'll come back.
Good afternoon, Commission. Eric Cotton, City of Tampa Zoning Office. This is the January cycle. This is scheduled to go to City Council on June 27th. There's a series of amendments. This is very similar to what the briefing what you heard. There's actually 5 amendments. There's 4 amendments from staff, 2 from City Council, and 1 from the legal department. And right now, again, this is the schedule that we were on. This is the status we're at right now, which is the Planning Commission public hearing for the recommendation to City Council for either consistent or inconsistent findings. I want to skip over this one. I'll go straight to the first request, which was expanding the ADUs that are available for the City of Tampa. The Planning Department, Stephen Benson's group, and Andy Mikulski, they did a number of outreach programs with different communities in Tampa, and out of that outreach is where we are right now on the overhead. The areas, and this is what's shown, that where a special use is required for a ADU. Tampa Heights allows it by right. So basically, it's East Tampa and the expansion area. So it's almost a quarter of the city, a fifth to a quarter of the city will allow for ADUs, either by right or through a special use process. You want me to just keep going? No. Okay, so I will step away. I'm done. I mean, does the commission have any questions? I thought there was another slide.
Yeah, we're going to keep going, yeah, because we gotta let you do your presentation first, and then we gotta get public comment, and then the Planning Commission will speak.
Okay.
So yeah.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Planning Commission staff, we recommend that this be found consistent with multiple areas of the comprehensive plan. It streamlines the development review process and ensures municipal codes remain sensitive to the changing trends and needs of Tampa's neighborhoods. It allows greater flexibility for homeowners to develop extended family residences and ADUs, and furthers the intent of the comprehensive plan by supporting rental housing opportunities and enabling people who are aging to remain in their neighborhoods. And it also would increase housing opportunities, promote mixed income neighborhoods, encourage infill development, and promote a housing pattern consistent with the compact city form strategy. With that, Planning Commission staff recommends that the Land Development Code Text Amendment 24-01 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
All right, thank you. We didn't have anyone sign up for the public comment on this item, so I will turn it over to the commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Sieben.
What's the distinction as to whether it's allowed by right or requires a special use?
Tampa Heights had a privately initiated, one of the last privately initiated text amendments that the city ran was for Tampa Heights. They, in their text amendment, included ADUs by right, meaning it was a permitted use within the Tampa Heights overlay district, where elsewhere it's a special use one.
All right, were there any other questions, comments, or discussion items from the commissioners? Not seeing any, then we'll go on ahead and close the public comment and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Surya.
Yeah, I'd like to forward the motion to approve the City of Tampa Land Development Code Text Amendment 24-1, Section 27-156.
Commissioner Buzzer?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Surya. Second to that consistency motion by Commissioner Buzzer. Are there any comments or questions, statements from the commissioners? Not seeing any this time, then would all signify their agreement by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, please continue.
Eric Cotton, City of Tampa, Zoning Office. The next amendment fits right in, hand in glove with the previous text amendment. This one is actually changing some of the special use criteria to Chapter 27. So in the code right now, there are certain provisions. You cannot have more than 2 unrelated individuals in an ADU. This would change it to an unlimited number of related individuals. So if a husband and wife were to have a child, they would not be in violation by having more than 2 individuals. This is just clarifying that language. It's removing the ability, right now in the code, if you're in a non-conforming structure, administratively we deny the request and it goes on appeal to City Council. And the third one, I apologize, let me just make sure I get the right language. The other one, I believe, well, where's the owner? Oh, the owner does not have to be owner occupied. Currently in the code, it has to be an owner occupied structure. This would allow both the front unit and the back unit to be rental. And staff request that the Planning Commission find this to be consistent with the comp plan.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The proposed amendment would streamline the development review process. It would allow greater flexibility for homeowners to develop extended family residences and ADUs, furthering the intent of the comprehensive plan. And the proposed changes would increase housing opportunities, promote mixed income neighborhoods, encourage infill development, and promote a housing pattern consistent with the compact city form strategy. With that, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed text amendment 2402 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you. All right, we didn't have anyone sign up in the public comment for this item either, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for questions, comments, discussions. Not seeing a lot of movement. Oh, Commissioner Sieben?
Sorry, there was one comment you made about the non-conforming uses. Can you explain that again?
Yeah. So right now in the code if you have a non-conforming garage, let's say you have a garage that says 2 feet off the rear property line, the code now says you cannot put an ADU in such a structure through the special use process. So as we're reviewing it at staff level, we automatically have to deny the request. and it goes on appeal to city council, and council can overturn staff, which they have done probably 99.5% of the time. So this is just clearing up the language to allow, at the staff level, for us to allow an ADU in a non-conforming structure.
Is there some subjective standard by which you guys determine that, or how do you usually determine whether or not it'll be allowed?
It either meets, well, right now, it either meets setbacks or it doesn't meet setbacks.
Well, you're saying,
So-
I'm sorry if I'm not understanding, but you're saying
Yeah.
even if it's non-conforming, you can choose whether or not to approve it,
No.
even though it's non-conforming?
No, if somebody applies for the special use one, and let's say they're going into a detached garage, it's 2 feet from the rear property line, we can now approve that. Previously, we weren't able to.
Right, so my question is, how do you make that determination whether or not you want to approve it? Is it just a subjective
No, it's
standard?
just by code. The code would say it's approvable, we would approve it.
Okay, so it's going to be approvable even though it might be a non-conforming
Correct.
use because of setbacks or any
Correct.
other non-conforming use?
Well, non-conforming structure.
Is it only because of the setbacks, though, or is it?
Correct. It's either setbacks or height. Those are the
Setbacks
two.
or height.
Those are the two issues, and both of those, we would have to deny that request administratively. Now we don't have to deny it. We can approve it administratively without having to send it to city council for another hearing.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Comments? Not seeing any, then I will go on ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Kona.
Yep. Motion to approve 24-2, Section 27-131, regulations governing individual special uses.
All right. Motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Kona. Commissioner Surya?
Will second the motion.
All right. Second to that motion of consistency finding. Are there any questions, comments, discussions from commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. Will all signify their agreement by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Oop. One? All right. We have one opposed, and that's Commissioner Seaman. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with it. Yeah. Supporting. There you go. Supporting. Sorry.
Long Monday.
Yeah. It should be 8. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who am I not counting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it should, am I wrong? Okay. 7. So now I want to get it right. I know how that goes in the record. So 7-1. All right. All right, next up, we have 24-3, Section 27-100 and 27-117, compliance with certificate of appropriateness. Mr. Cotton.
Eric Cotton, City of Tampa Zoning Office. This is amendment, this is a new section of the code which will provide language for a fine up to $15,000 if somebody does what's called demolition by neglect. If you have a historic building and you let it continue to deteriorate, you don't try to keep the building in proper shape, you just let it continually fall apart over the years. This would allow through the code enforcement process for the magistrate to apply a fine of up to $15,000 as it goes through that public hearing process. And staff would like you to find it, of course, consistent with the code.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The proposed amendment would continue to conserve existing housing stock and physical assets which contribute to neighborhood character while ensuring municipal codes remain sensitive to the changing trends and needs of Tampa's neighborhoods. And it would also continue to protect and preserve the City of Tampa's historical resources and encourage historic preservation in neighborhoods by developing standards that allow the use of historic preservation standards within the city code enforcement procedures to prevent passive demolition of historic structures. And with that, Planning Commission staff finds it consistent and recommends it consistent for 2403 with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you. We didn't have anyone sign up in the public comment, but I see Commissioner Seaman moving, so.
Sorry, guys, on a roll today, I guess. Is there any special consideration given to anyone if they can prove that they can't afford to maintain it? Maybe this has been in their family for a long time and they can live there, but they're just, it's too expensive to maintain. I know some of these historical buildings are pricier.
Well, and that's Eric Cotton, City of Tampa. That's part of the process for the magistrate hearing or the code enforcement special magistrate hearing is for that person to bring out that evidence. It's not an automatic fine. It's not like, okay, the building's in poor shape. here's your fine. There's a public hearing process that the person would go through to address all those issues, and if there's, if there's grants and such that the city would help somebody apply for, the city would definitely help someone apply for those.
So you're just saying, given the special consideration of that situation, that someone could be fined up to $15,000?
Correct.
Commissioner Buzzer?
Thank you. What is the definition of the historic building? Is it off the historic register?
I'm going to kick it over to Dana.
Okay.
And it, by state, is anything older than 50 years, but that's not what the intent is.
So Dana Crosby Collier, I'm with the City Attorney's Office. I represent the Architectural Review Commission and the Barrio Latino Commission, and we do see alterations and such to historical structures come through every month at our meetings. These are called contributing structures, and they've been identified as structures that have a historical significance in our community. And we do go back 50 years from when we first established our historic districts, which is about 1933. That would be where we would have started calling those historical contributing structures from that point back. They have to be at least 50 years old. But in this case, the intent of this amendment is, so the structure is already deemed contributing, and that's already been done by process of its age or its value to the community or its designation. In this case, this addresses cases where if someone allows something to go into demolition by neglect or intentionally tears it down, and it's a contributing structure, we do have code enforcement code enforcement assessments that we can use that will pin it at a certain amount of money a day. However, because of the egregious nature of the destruction of a contributing structure, which is a very old structure that's already been identified by the city as such, as a valuable structure to the city, this allows us to impose a fine up to $15,000. Because statute says if you find something to be irreparable or irreplaceable, like a grand oak tree or a contributing structure, then you can decide by statute, by code, that you want to impose a higher fine for that destruction than what would generally be allowed under code enforcement.
So to your point, though, the process is to describe that as a historic building or on that registry, and then who actually does that process? Is it the City of Tampa?
Yes, the City of Tampa. So we have a few historic districts, and the older homes that are called contributing structures in those districts, like Hyde Park or Ybor City, they're very old buildings. Those are in a district, so they are contributing structures in a historic district, so they have that designation. If something, the German library on Ashley, recently it came to the city's attention. It's really not that old, but it's very unique in its architecture, and the city owns the building. So they said, we want to designate that as a contributing structure and preserve its historic value. So the city can designate city properties. We can do emergency designation of other properties if it's going to be destroyed by a development. But most of these properties are actually in an existing historic district that's been in existence since the late 80s.
The last question would be, since we already have code enforcement to cite people for having unsafe structures, are we imposing a property right issue on these property owners by this $15,000 fine? Because as long as I don't harm anyone, and I'm just being hypothetical, if I let my building run down and I keep clear of code enforcement with falling things, or my windows are all closed and the roof is still there and not dropping onto pedestrians, then why would we want to amp that up? I know for the historical part, but as a property owner, do you really have that right to enforce a fine above and beyond what code enforcement can already do?
It's authorized in statute. In the code enforcement statute, 162.09 of Florida statutes, that's where they tell cities and counties how much your maximum fine can be. And in that statute, they say if it's something that's really going to be egregious and can never be replaced, you can fine up to $15,000. So it really becomes another tool in the toolbox for code enforcement as they're going through their process of doing their investigation, and as the special magistrate is hearing that case, because again, it's heard by a special magistrate before any fine is levied. And at that point, the city would say, this house, we had this happen in Ybor recently, where the oldest house in Ybor City was destroyed. And, that was our remedy, was the $100 a day. And that's why the council said you need to push forward with trying to preserve the historic housing stock. So we would go in as a staff and say, this is a grand tree, it can't be replaced. This is a historic structure, it can't be replaced. We'd like you to impose the maximum fine of $15,000 in this case. And then the special magistrate would make their finding. And then the owner would be able to respond, and then the special magistrate would make the finding.
Commissioner Sieben.
My question is, so you said a magistrate makes the determination.
Yes.
Is there like a process for what I was referring to earlier? If someone can't afford the improvements, I know that for some of these historic buildings, you have to preserve like wooden windows, and those are incredibly expensive.
That's
that
right.
kind of thing.
You do.
So is there a specific process that they can go through to prove that they, can't afford to do so?
So with code enforcement, the investigator will go out, they'll make the finding, they'll issue the notice of violation, they'll give the owner so many days to correct the issue, whatever it is. At that point in time, the owner would look for resources and time, extensions of time and different things they may need in order to bring their property into compliance. At the end of we give them, end up with 60 or 75 days because of the nature of the repair. At the end of the 75-day period, the code inspector goes back out, looks at the property and says, whoops, not in compliance. They set it for a hearing. It's set for a hearing at some point down the road. It's usually a couple of months later. So during this time period, this owner has this time to come into compliance, and that would be the time that they would come to, in our case, the Historic Preservation Office out at Hannah, and talk to them about options and resources for them, grants and other funding sources that might be available to them.
But, okay, so when they go to the special magistrate, there's no, process for them to say, these are the ways in which I can't pay, I've applied, for these kinds of grants?
Of course, they can provide their defense to the special magistrate.
Right, but there's no specific process for it, and the special magistrate can make a determination either way based on...
When it gets to the special magistrate, the city presents its case, the owner presents their defense, and the special magistrate, just like any other judge, will weigh the evidence and weigh the issue and make the decision. They may grant additional time. They may find it not in compliance. They may impose this fine. They may impose a lesser fine because this is just another tool in their toolbox. So anything can happen, just like going into court. Anything can happen.
Okay.
All right. Any other, Commissioner Soria? I see you moving.
Two questions. It mentions negligent, intentional, and willful violation of the provisions. So if I'm not able to afford it, is that considered one of those options?
Let me go back and look at the slide. So yes, it has to be intentional or willful or by negligence of action. So yes, it's a situation. It could be affordability. It could be. But generally speaking, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the home that was built in 1908, and it's sitting there in Hyde Park, and it's not, and someone shut the power off, and it's not being taken care of, and it's going to dwindle away, and it's not going to ever come back. So usually when there's an issue like an affordability issue, and I've worked with the historic preservation staff for almost 2 years now, and they will work with people to help them to find ways to get their property up to speed. So that's not the issue we're talking about. We're talking about this intentional or willful, or really by intentional neglect.
Okay.
When you sit and let this historic property go to waste because the land underneath it is more valuable than what's sitting on it, in their eyes.
And second question on it just might be a verbiage thing. It says fine off $15,000, not up to. Does that make a difference, or so does that mean would it be always a $15,000 fine, or up depending on the magistrate?
I'm not 100%. I would have to look at statute again. 162.09 allows them to pose that fine of 15. I don't know that they would always do that. I don't know the answer exactly from a process perspective and from a special magistrate. Sure.
All right, Commissioner Sieben.
Last one, I promise. Could we ask the city to make some provision or to come up with some process for if it were an affordability issue, like an application process or something for a special consideration if they can prove that it's not affordable?
The city council can definitely look at their code enforcement mechanisms in the code enforcement code and decide, but the planning commission can't have the city use that as a, go ahead.
Stephen Benson, City Planning Director. If you have a specific recommendation for a program or additional resources that you think would be helpful or valuable, we welcome that recommendation. We can convey that to City Council and have that discussion with them.
Commissioner Buzza?
Thank you. More, I guess, back to individual property rights. City of Plant City downtown was basically destroyed by the 80s. It was empty. A lot of things were boarded up. The Main Street program came in and did some street freshening, but it was private market that rebuilt that neighborhood, and it wasn't necessarily by code enforcement, or as long as the buildings were not falling down. I keep circling back to property rights for this situation, that if I have a building, I own it, and it's not hurting anybody, I don't think the state or the city has the right to say what I can or cannot do with that building. As long as code enforcement is there's no danger to neighbors or pedestrians, and it just seemed like an overreach to me. But thank you.
Ms. Ornito.
Could, Dana, could we clarify, they would be going into the code enforcement process because they were not meeting some portion of the city's code, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Generally speaking, there's a complaint that it comes from someone who must now give their name under law, and it comes into the city, and the city code enforcement goes out and they investigate that complaint, and they determine if there is a violation. If there is a violation, they go to the code, they identify the section that the party is in violation of, they issue a notice of violation, and then they give the owner so many days to fix it. And but yes, it's a code. It's based on a code violation. Any code enforcement activity is based on a specific code violation that's the subject of a report from an identified citizen.
And to clarify that point, the historic preservation process, to Commissioner Siebert's point, like wood frame windows are psychotically expensive to repair. It took almost a decade for the Plant City HRB to allow vinyl windows that look like wood to be used in historic restructures.
That's a different issue, really. That goes to our design standards. So when you move,
it goes to a cost standard too, because you're basically hand building wood frame windows as opposed to buying vinyl windows.
I understand,
but that's an affordability issue that goes back to these homeowners or property owners not being able to afford the fix.
And if you live in a historic district, that historic district has specific design guidelines, the whole book, and it's regulated by the Department of the Interior also. And that guideline, that book tells you as an owner what you can and can't do with regard to, and the vinyl clad wood windows is an excellent example because we recently had one come on to the council on review. So yes, when you go to replace your windows in the historic portion of the house, you'll replace them with wood because that is how that's part of the historical significance of that property. If you add on to your structure in the back, you can use less expensive. You can use the vinyl clad wood back in the new construction, but when you're rehabbing the original house, you have to use the original materials in order for that structure to maintain its historic integrity. If you start using vinyl clad wood windows on a house that was built in 1910 now, and then you change out the wood siding for hardy board, and then you put on a different type of roof, before you know it, you don't have a historic structure anymore. You have a newly rebuilt shell. So the design guidelines control how historic renovations are done, and the commissions will look at those design guidelines, and they'll look at your plan for your update of your house and look at the design guidelines and make their decision and whether or not it falls within compliance of the design guidelines.
Wait, before you start, I just want to put the caveat out there that if anybody's going to make a motion against staff, remember that we need some policies and stuff to go with that. So if you're thinking of it, please ask Ms. Ornito or someone, or make sure you have some policies ready to go. Commissioner Sieben, please.
I just wanted to say that my concern wasn't really, with people who bought a historic home and are just neglecting it. It's more of like, people who've been here for 3 or 4 generations, and somebody's grandparents gave them this house, and this is where they're living, and they can't afford, hundreds of thousands of dollars for windows.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion items? Ms. Ornita, no, none from you. Done. Everybody had their fill. All right, then I am going to close public comment on this item and open it up to the commissioners for motions on this item. Commissioner Sieben.
How do I make a motion with substance?
You want to make one finding it inconsistent?
Yes.
Okay, give me a moment to
Okay.
look at.
Yeah,
It
Commissioner Cardenas.
sounds like more of her issues specifically having to do with people that have been kind of have had the property throughout years. Is there a way to do something to kind of maybe ask for a change or an addition to it, or something that has to do with people that have owned the property for a very long time? Yeah, like, if the property was passed to you and you didn't necessarily purchase it, generational, or if you've had it over 20 years, somebody bought it when they were, I don't know, in their 50s and now they're in their 70s. And
Well, you can send that recommendation to staff, with their staff, to have a discussion with the board, but I don't know unless you're talking about making a change to the actual document here today.
no, not necessarily here today, but maybe for them to consider.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with whatever finding you all make, you can ask to transmit in the letter transmitting that resolution to City Council some feedback about the why. I think that's always helpful for them to understand and potentially make changes. I don't know if in the timing of this process-wise, if there's an opportunity or you see any opportunity to make modifications to address that concern.
Generally speaking, Dana Crosby Collier, City Attorney's Office, will report back to the council with the findings of the Planning Commission, that you found A, B, and C consistent, maybe found D inconsistent with the comp plan, and you'll transmit, as Melissa said, you'll transmit your letter with your recommendations to council, and we'll have that opportunity to have that conversation with them, but it will not happen in this cycle because this cycle is already on the road to being approved or not. But we would be able to take those ideas back. We also, because these homes mostly are in the historic districts, it may be something that the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, might want to workshop some ideas as well, since they have a little broader scope. But yes, we would take back your recommendation, either consistent or inconsistent, back to the council on June 27th, and then pick this conversation up later at your request. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right.
I think I would, based on the feedback I've heard from the commissioners, I would suggest utilizing public property rights element objective 1.1 and policy 1.1.1, which talk about maintaining private property rights and the ability for property owners to maintain their property.
All right. So we have a couple policies now. Do we have a motion again, Commissioner Sieben?
I'm going to give this a whirl. Okay. Motion to find, is it 27-117? Is that the one we're on?
24-3?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Motion to find City of Tampa Land Development Code Text Amendment 24-3, Section 27-100 and 27-117, compliance with Certificate of Appropriateness, inconsistent due to comprehensive plan policies 1.1 and 1.1.1 as they relate to property rights.
All right. So we have a motion of inconsistency finding, citing objective 1.1 and policy 1.1.1.
I'll second.
And I see Commissioner Buzza has the second to that inconsistency motion. So are there any questions or discussions from the commissioners? So we're voting on inconsistency here. So everybody who agrees with inconsistency, please signify that agreement by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. So we got 3 nays. We got Saria, Kress, and Joseph is nay. And then we have Bowden, Cardenas, Buzza, Sieben, and Kona as ayes. So it's that 4-3. The ayes have it. So it's inconsistent. All right.
5-3, right? They're 8 here.
They're all right?
Yeah.
Okay. 5-3. Yeah, I can't do the math. All right. Next up, 3B4 24-4, Section 27-159, permitted projections into required yards.
Eric Cotton, City of Tampa. This is an amendment to clean up language from 2021. In 2021, there was a motion made by council. It was adopted to allow encroachments of porches into the front setback by right without having to get a variance or a design exception. Through the adoption process and when it got into codified in Muni Code, the language was inconsistent with what council originally wanted to what was actually put into Muni Code. This is an effort to clear up that code section, which would allow encroachments in all zoning districts, RS districts and RM districts, to allow an encroachment of up to 8 feet of a porch as long as it's a certain distance back from a property line. It is removing the ability of someone who is already zoned plan development, which is a site plan controlled district, to utilize that section of the code. Council removed that as part of when we were discussing this, removed the ability for a PD to come back and have a front porch encroach into the front setback. Thank you.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. By removing the requirement for a design exception or variance, the proposed amendment will streamline the development review process for residential development. And with the proposed, it also regulates the architecture and design of development to Tampa's history and use designs that reflect Tampa's settings. And by allowing front porches more easily, it will relate new and existing homes seamlessly into the robust inventory of homes. With that, Planning Commission staff recommends that 24-04 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
All right, thank you. We didn't have anyone sign up for the public comment on this one either, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for discussion, questions, or comments. Yes, Commissioner Buzza.
Just to clarify, the encroachment is on the setback line from the city-owned, like city street, the setback of 10 feet or 20 feet, depending on the neighborhood. That's the encroachment we're talking about, right? It's not over any property lines. I mean, that's...
No, correct. It's on the private property.
Just for the setback requirements.
Correct, from the front property line back to the structure.
Very good, thank you.
Commissioner Sieben.
I'm sorry, can you clarify what you said about a PD? So if it was permitted in a PD, is it now no longer permitted in that PD, or?
No, when this was first adopted, council, at the time it was amended in 2021, said if you have an existing PD, you can use that language, even if it's built, let's say you have a PD for townhomes, and somebody wanted to add a front porch onto their townhome, they could do that by right. Council said, you came in for a PD site plan controlled district, you should have known what you wanted to build. That's why they took that out. So a PD doesn't get that option anymore. If you want to do a PD in a townhome, you have to apply for a variance or a design exception, whatever the process would be for that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, were there any other questions, discussion items from the commissioners? Not seeing any. I will go on ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions. Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move that we find Tampa text amendment 24-04, section 27 and 159, consistent with the Tampa Comprehensive Plan, and move on to the Tampa City Council.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Buzza. All right, a second to that motion by Commissioner Bowden. Are there any questions, comments, or discussions from the commissioners? Not seeing any. Then we'll all signify their agreement by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next up we have the action item 3B5, 24-5, section 27-177 and 27-178 Ybor City parking lots.
Eric Cotton, City of Tampa Development Coordination. This is a response to a city council initiated motion, which was for staff to look at 27-178. concerning improving the safety and security of parking lots in Ybor City. This request is basically removing principal use parking lots, which is basically just a parking lot, no other use attached to it, from a permitted use for anything new. That's anything new coming in would have to apply for a special use 2 in the YC1, YC3, YC4, 5, and 6 zoning districts. So it'd be a special use 2, which requires city council approval. Updating buffering and signage requirements for both paid and unpaid lots. And for paid lots requiring, that are open after 10 o'clock, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to have uniformed security officers licensed by the state of Florida and posted hours of operation. In a nutshell, that's that request. Thank you.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The request continues to streamline the development and review process and ensure municipal codes remain sensitive to the changing trends and needs of Tampa's neighborhoods. And the proposed language provides standards for buffering and screening and overall aesthetics to ensure the parking lots do not negatively affect the neighborhood. With that, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed text amendment 2405 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you. All right, we had a few people sign up for this one. I'm gonna start with the people online first. We got a couple people who are online who signed up for it. Is Stephanie Harrison Bailey on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead. Your comments.
Alrighty, yes, Stephanie Harrison Bailey here, Ybor resident and member of the historic Ybor Neighborhood Association. And I spoke last time this came before the Planning Commission as well. I just wanted to reiterate my previous comments that generally very aligned with all of the proposed code changes that staff is making. The residents are really excited for these changes. They've been a really long time coming. There is one big issue that I personally have, and that is that the proposed changes, it seems like the city is proposing to kind of reset the clock on the current code and these new code changes. So most of the code that's staying intact has been in place since 2010, and we are, we've spent years fighting some of these lots, trying to get them to come up to code, and city is proposing that the clock resets and the current parking lots are given even more time to come into compliance, and that is just kind of a non-starter for us as a neighborhood. We've been kind of struggling with these parking lots for so long, and we'd like to see them come up to code sooner rather than later. And we also have some concerns around the enforcement of this code. It seems like enforcement generally has not been happening very effectively for at least the last several years, if not the last, call it 15 years since the existing code's been on the books. So we're just looking for something from the city that shows how they're going to enforce these things moving forward, so that we don't have to look at these nasty parking lots for much longer in our National Historic Landmark District. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have David Bailey. Is David Bailey on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Hi, David Bailey, also a member of the Historic Ybor Neighborhood Association. Just to kind of dovetail on some of Stephanie's comments, we had very specific concerns that we stated at your last month's meeting, and I know that city staff was there, and to date we've received no specific responses to those concerns. We have those concerns very detailed in writing, and for some reason the zoning department is not responding to those questions. On the plus side, like Stephanie said, we do see progress being made in what's being proposed to you. It's just, like Stephanie said, the poison pill is that basically the city is giving these parking lots a path on compliance and enforcement, and part of our research that we've been doing for quite a long time, unearthed some transcripts from the Planning Commission from some time ago. I think it might be about a decade ago when this topic came to this esteemed group, and there was a lot of conversation and concern from the commissioners about how these lots would be left indefinitely allowed in the historic district. And part of the chatter, which I can't quote you chapter and verse, was about, you know, recommending some sort of a definite end date to these surface lots, which I don't want the commission to think that we are anti-parking. We are just pro-historic Ybor. We're tired of these dirty lots blighting our National Historic Landmark District with their crime and trash. And, you know, we have to sleep next to these parking lots every night, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we would ask you, or hopefully the zoning department will hear us this time, to sit down with the neighborhood association and hammer out our concerns and our questions so that we can fully get behind what they're trying to achieve for all of us. That's it.
Thank you. All right. And lastly, we have Ed Austin. Is Ed Austin on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, as a resident of Ybor City and part of the Neighborhood Association, one of the few National Historic Landmark districts in Florida, I wanted to take just a minute to give my thoughts on this whole thing. Private paid lots are everywhere in Ybor City, and they are not very well maintained, if any. And code complaints are ongoing. This would not be tolerated in other city neighborhoods. We do like some of the progress that is being made. And one of the simple solutions is to bring these paid lots up to the same standard as the city parking lots. The city garage parking lots have appropriate attendance, they have appropriate lighting, maintenance, trash pickup, and so forth. So, you know, let's bring up the standards. And the city has had years to sort this out, and it's taken a long time, and it seems that they're continuing to drag their feet. I don't think this clock should be reset. I think the items that we're talking about should be addressed currently so that we as a neighborhood can move forward in Ybor City the way we would like to see our neighborhood treated. So we're asking for wisdom and action now, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Now to our in-person commenters. First we have, what is this? Steve Michelini.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm urging you to find this matter inconsistent, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, you're responding to complaints that are without fact. These are opinions about what they perceive to be happening, and it simply isn't backed up by the facts either contained by the Code Enforcement Office or the Police Department. There was a motion made to have a safety and security plan developed by the Police Department that was supposed to come back to the City Council before this matter came up to you. The reason it's before you, in my understanding, was the neighbors complained that they wanted action, and they pushed the staff and continued to send emails to them saying, we got to get this on an agenda, got to get it on an agenda. All of that happened before the Police Department could develop their own plan. That should be the most important component of this. When you start talking about property rights and forcing people to do things, you shouldn't be forcing an individual property owner to solve a problem that's an area-wide problem. And what they're trying to do is to force the security and safety issues onto individual property owners instead of as a community-wide issue that has to be addressed comprehensively. You can't solve an area problem with individual solutions. It simply doesn't happen. When we brought this before the City Council, we argued this, and the attorney for my client is going to be here speaking about it in a second. But when you deal with an issue and you want a text amendment, that affects everybody. We had arguments regarding paid versus unpaid lots. Initially, this change was only going to affect paid lots. You can't stop crime or any kind of other issue at a property line. So you have adjacent lots that are paid, and you have some that are unpaid. They have to be addressed comprehensively, where everyone's following the same kind of rules. The rule change and the timelines that are associated with it, when you change the rules, you need time to comply with whatever those new rules are. You shouldn't be held immediately responsible for that. The issues that we're talking about are very large. They're not individually located. And I can tell you that the properties that are operated by my client, which is 717 Parking, they are cleaned. They are operated in accordance with the best intentions of the code, and they are not crime-ridden. For over a year, there have been no incidences whatsoever that would warrant this kind of change requiring individual security on individual lots. Simply isn't there. And I've coordinated that as well with the police department. I've asked them for an incident report. It simply doesn't exist. So an opinion and a feeling about a problem is not a fact. And we urge you to find this inconsistent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Allison Doucette. Allison D. Might have butchered the last name, sorry.
You got it right.
Oh.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Allison Doucette. I am speaking today on behalf of a family of companies that own and operate paid surface parking lots under the 717 Parking Services brand. I spoke at public comment during the last hearing and kind of gave you a preview. I have also sent correspondence to the Planning Commission. Hopefully it got to you all on Friday. But we ask that this board or this commission find that these proposed revisions to the Tampa City Code are inconsistent with the plan. And I specifically point in my letter to PR Goal 1 and Objective 1.1. You know, this is where these provisions, which acknowledge private property rights and require that they are taken into consideration. These provisions are required by Florida law, and they specifically articulate a respect for property rights, and these need to be taken into account. Unfortunately, what we have here is, as Mr. Michelini stated, a community problem that's now being levied on just paid parking lot providers. And that is, there is a requirement presently in the code for paid parking lots to have parking attendants during the weekend hours, Thursday through Saturday from 10 p.m. to, I believe, 4 a.m. Under these proposed change, that is the paid parking attendant is changed only for paid parking lots to licensed security guards that also work for a state agency. So essentially private security for these parking lots in order to supposedly solve a community crime problem. We have actually enclosed a map in our correspondence, and I can put it on here if I can figure out, but essentially if you look at the map of the parking lots in Ybor City, you have paid lots directly across the street from unpaid lots throughout Ybor City. And what this proposed amendment does is take the burden of reducing crime and just place it just on those paid parking lot owners and not on private parking lots. And if you see on this map, the paid parking lots that are private and paid are in pink, and the ones that are simply private and not paid are in blue. So in several areas, you have them directly across the street. And some of these paid versus unpaid parking lots, a good example would be the Columbia restaurant has an unpaid parking lot that's for their customers directly across the street from one of our clients' parking lots. You can make a reservation to go to the Columbia at 10 p.m. on any weekend night, and you can be in that parking lot after. Only our clients' parking lots would be required to have security after that time. And as we stated, there's no rational basis for it to require only paid parking lots to actually have the security as distinguished between the non-paid parking lots directly across the street. There's no evidence or suggestion that paid parking lots specifically, as opposed to parking lots generally, have an issue. So my other inconsistency point was Objective 8.16 and Policy 8.16.1, which requires the consistent application of development regulations. We think, just for the reasons I stated, these are also inconsistent as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, I have a David Smith who says if needed. No, okay. Okay. All right. And that's it for the people who signed up. Does the city want to come back and respond to any of that?
Dana Crosby Collier, City Attorney's Office. Just mentioning that council has been looking at this issue for many years, and they did ask us to bring forth this language to them for their consideration, so we just ask for your favorable recommendation. We believe that the staff has identified policies in the comp plan that support the adoption of this ordinance as well.
All right.
Any questions?
Over to the commissioners for questions, comments. Commissioner Soria.
I had a question. I heard the word clock resetting multiple times. Is anybody able to clarify on that?
So on the original adoption of the language back in 2010, 2014 timeframe, there was a timeframe put in for parking lots to come into compliance. And it's not all parking lots have come into compliance, which is what I believe what you heard from the neighborhood representative speaking to. This is actually I don't want to use the term restarting the clock, but if council were to adopt the new language, there's a period of about 6 months where parking lot operators, and this applies to the city of Tampa also because this is all paid parking lots, it's not privately paid parking lots, it's all paid parking lots, including public lots, would have to comply with the code. So there's a 6 month that you would expect somebody to install the required fencing, install wheel stops, install whatever has to get installed once council makes a determination and adopts the code. You're welcome.
Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be a question for Ms. Crosby, I believe, but we'll find out. So in your summary section for the city, that's basically reclassifying all these existing permitted uses does that truly mean that all existing permitted use parking lots in the Ybor district will have to go through this process? Because that seems to be kind of where I'm reading that summary page that you have in our package. The amendment exhibit E, reclassifying parking principal use to special use to requiring public notice, hearing, and council approval.
Eric Cotton, City of Tampa. No, sir, that's only for if someone is coming in new.
Coming in new. Okay,
Yes, sir.
So it won't be for
Existing parking lots just have
lots.
to comply with buffering requirements and security requirements if that's what council were to approve, yes.
Okay. And the second question would be regarding the security question. I was reading deeper in here about the requirements for security. That just has to be a Florida licensed security guard. It does not need to be a off-duty law enforcement officer.
That's correct.
That's
That's
correct?
correct. Yes,
Okay, because one of the speakers had mentioned that basically they had to be associated with a Florida agency, i.e. a law enforcement agency, doing off-duty work, which is considerably more expensive at $40 a pop an hour versus 15 to 20 for Florida licensed unarmed security. And they're not required to be armed either, correct?
That is correct. This is a Florida licensed security guard. It does say the person has to be a employee of a licensed security agency. So if I had a security company, Cotton Security,
Right.
then that security guard would be licensed through me.
We did, pardon me, I'm so sorry, Eric. Dana Crosby Collier, City Attorney's Office. We did revise that language slightly. Eric's been through many revisions of this. They would provide at least one uniformed private security guard who is licensed by the state of Florida and bonded. The security guard shall remain physically and visibly on the premises of the lot or garage Thursday, Friday, and Saturday between the hours of 10 and 4. So it's, you could be Eric Cotton LLC, and he's a one-man show, and he's bonded, and he's a security guard. He can be present on those premises.
Good. Commissioner Connor?
Yeah, I think the security component is a little egregious, quite honestly, to add that and make that something that has to be done. I mean, considering all of the paid lots that the city enforces, in downtown, there's no security walking, those streets. So while I believe in the code enforcement part of it, I think the security part from 10 to 4 is a little much for me to approve.
If I may, Eric Cotton, City of Tampa. I do want to emphasize this is strictly for Ybor City, and the parking garages and parking lots in Ybor that are run by the city do have armed security. 24. I don't know if it's 24/7, but they are available. They are patrolling Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights.
All right. Are there any more comments or discussions? Oh, Commissioner Kress.
My question's for the city. I heard a statement that there's no real, I guess, fact basis that there has been crime or violence that happened in these lots. Does anyone have those statistics? Is that true?
Yeah, Dana Crosby Collier. Did you want to? Yeah, Eric does have a slide. As I mentioned, we have brought this to City Council on numerous occasions over the past 2 years, and there has been a lot of studies done and a lot of information provided relating to crime in this area. And we do have we don't have the slide, but we have heard testimony from our TPD at City Council meetings regarding the rational basis for the request to do this type of regulation. And City Council will hear from them again when we bring it to them for first reading.
All right, Commissioner Cardenas.
So, what you heard, did it say that there was violence or anything that happened in these areas?
There was
Sorry.
testimony. I don't have the statistics to tell you exactly what kind of crime, and I didn't present the matter to council, so I can't testify as to what was presented. But I do know that it was a report from Tampa Police Department discussing crime in Ybor City and in the parking lots in Ybor City and other areas. I wish we had the slide we had, but we didn't bring it today. We will have it at council when it goes to first reading.
All right, Commissioner Braza.
Well, to kind of go back to the security component that Commissioner Kona and Commissioner Cardenas brought up earlier, you know, the imposition on a property owner as property rights to hire security when we're moving toward automation. A lot of the lots are now doing electronic key cards, but they have to have an employee out there just for the electric gates to open up, you know, that they're doing prepaids or that sort of thing. I have actually, you know, read through this entire amendment, and I am fine with everything except for the paid security part. You know, if they want to have an attendant out there, that's fine, but that cost, parking lots don't make that much money to begin with. You can think they're all cash cows, but they're really not. I mean, it's low margin business, and you're adding additional cost, and it's almost like Ybor City and Tampa PD are kind of say, hey, we need some help with crime. We're going to put that on imposition on landowners to hire security to deter that crime. And, you know, armed or not, I don't know if that really makes a difference for, you know, the crazy drunks in Ybor at 2 a.m., but is it a fair imposition on a property owner to add that requirement for security? Again, I have no problems with any of the other items in this item, but the security issue is kind of, it is sticking with me, that that's imposition on property owners' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buzza, and I would also make my disclaimer again. Hopefully, Ms. Zornita has been looking for policies and objectives, that if we're going to make a motion against staff, we're going to need some good policies and objectives to go with that, so keep that in mind. Commissioner Cardenas.
Yeah, I think I'm a little torn myself, just because, you know, you always think about you go somewhere, you pay for parking, and then they say that there's nothing behind, you know, any protection of anything that you have in your car, but then again, you're paying for parking, right? So there's that, and then at the same time, you know, they've got these lights. Well, I mean, they wouldn't be renting them out if they weren't making money. Otherwise, they're making money. So, you know, in a way, you look at any community, and I feel like it's everybody's part to do their part, and not just their part isn't necessarily always just making money. So, kind of torn on it a little bit.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardenas. Commissioner Caress.
Yeah, I wish we had all the facts about where the crime and violence and parties occur, but anecdotally, and from what I read in the paper, it does seem like it's in a lot of the surface parking lots after the bars close, and I think that's kind of the whole point of this, is if they have security there, that can address that problem. So I get both sides of the issue for sure, but I think without a security component, I'm not sure that this would really go that far and be that effective.
Thank you, Commissioner Caress. Any other comments or questions, thoughts from the commissioners? I'm not seeing much action. Commissioner Soria?
Just a thought. I mean, if the cost goes up, it eventually goes down to the consumers too. So I think it should be, if the consumers want to be safer and they see a lot that's providing security, maybe they'll be more inclined to go into those lots as well. So just a thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Soria. Commissioner Kona.
I just think it's just fundamentals that it's not a private property's responsibility to be law enforcement, which, you know, that's my major concern. Like you said, Commissioner Buzz, I agree with the majority of it except for that requirement. And I think, you know, I think if you're going to Ybor, there's plenty of security that's out there. There's plenty of police officers that fight law enforcement. I don't think adding one security personnel to every lot that the private sector has to pay for is going to make it, you know, any different.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Kona. Any other comments, statements from the commissioners? Going once, going twice, then I will close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions. Commissioner Buzza.
Well, I would like to do a hybrid motion to move for approval for consistency of 27-177 and 27-178 with all items except for the use of requirements for uniform security.
Second.
Security, huh? So we have a motion to remove the security stuff and find it consistent with the security stuff removed. All right, we're with it. All right, and we have a motion of consistency minus the security stuff, and we have a second to that motion by Commissioner Kona. Are there any questions or clarifications needed from the commissioners before we go ahead and take this vote? Commissioner Sieben?
What happens if we vote no on this motion?
If we vote no on this motion.
Do we need a new motion? Is that how that goes?
Yeah, if it dies, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, is everybody clear? Any other questions? No? All right, then would all signify their approval with the consistency, with the edited consistency finding by saying aye?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, we got 3 ayes and 5 nays, so the motion dies. So we're gonna need another motion.
And I need to know who voted no.
Oh, Saria, Bowden, Cardenas, Kress, and Sieben voted no. And Joseph, Buzza, and Kona voted yes. Sorry about that. And we are going to need another motion from you happy, smiling people. We can also, did anyone have any questions or wanted any clarifications on anything before we take another motion? If not, then I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Sieben.
I'd like to propose a motion for consistency with City of Tampa Land Development Code Text Amendment 24-5, Section 27-177 and 27-178, Ybor City parking lots.
All right,
And
so,
move to council.
all right, so motion of consistency finding, plain, and a second to that motion by Commissioner Cardenas. Are there any questions or clarifications? Totally understood, don't be shy. Okay, so we have a motion of consistency finding before us. Would all signify their approval with that motion by saying aye? Those opposed?
Aye.
Nay, aye. Whatever, yeah, okay. So the motion passes, consistency passes. Saria, Bowden, Cardenas, Kress, and Sieben voted aye in support of it. And Kona, Buzza, and Joseph voted against it. But the motion carries as consistent. All right.
Mr. Chair, will the record show that for when Tampa City Council sees that, the two motions, or they just see the final approval?
They will just see the final resolution, but it'll show the 5-3 vote.
All right, next up we have item B6, 24-6, sections 27-132 and 27-156, alcohol sales. Mr. Cotton.
Something I think everybody could probably use right now. Eric Cotton, City of Tampa Zoning Office. This was another council-initiated text amendment. This is very specific to professional sports teams only. Was it on the next page? There we go. So in this one, it was a sports team that is affiliated with a national sports team, such as the Rays. In this case, this is specific to the women's soccer team that is going to be playing at Blake High School. they can apply for an annual AB permit. It's a special use one. It's an administrative review that does require public notice. For consumption on premise only, it has to be on government-controlled land, such as city or county park or a school board property, minimum of 15 acres. Alcohol sales can only be done on days where a professional event is being played, so a game or a match. Sales have to cease at midnight. If the team ceases operation for whatever reason, the AB permit would go away, would cease also that same time frame. And of course, if it's on city property, then the mayor would have to authorize the request to actually move forward on the alcohol permit request. Thank you.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The request continues to streamline the development review process and keeping up with the trends and needs of Tampa's neighborhoods. And the proposed language provides criteria for alcohol sales to meet to ensure the establishment does not have negative effects on the neighborhood. With that, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed Land Development Code Text Amendment 2406 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
All right, we didn't have anyone sign up in the public comment for this item, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Sieben, smiling already.
So would they have to apply for a new special use permit every year? Is that how this works?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
Yes,
they have
ma'am.
to go through a whole city council process on an annual basis?
No, it's an
It's an administrative-
SU1, so it's an administrative process.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Kress.
Just a suggestion, you keep your eye on the parking lots after the matches.
Yes, ma'am. Duly noted.
All right, are there any other comments, questions from the commissioners? I am not seeing any. Oh, Commissioner Sieben.
Last one, sorry. Why was this brought about as a request from city council?
It has roots in the women's soccer team. There's, I guess, a new soccer organization for women's soccer that's not part of like the Major League Soccer. It's, I guess, like a second tier, like a AA kind of soccer league, I guess. And originally there was the original goal was to have a stadium in Ybor, but the inability to get that property zoned appropriately for a soccer stadium, they entered into negotiations, I believe, with the school board, and they're going to be playing at Blake. But as part of that, they want to be able to sell beer and wine for consumption on premise only.
All right, Commissioner Soria.
May I follow up on
Oh,
that question,
sorry.
please?
Yeah.
Stephen Benson, City of Tampa. If this does not move forward, then they would have to rezone the property they're looking at. So this is creating an administrative process for them to ask for the alcohol permit.
Commissioner, you canceling yours, Soria? Go to Bowden. I'll come back to you, Soria.
No, I still have the
Okay, go.
So you mentioned this is for a specific soccer team to sell alcohol at a high school location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at the moment, like if it's another professional team, because they have their own stadium, they can sell it. But it's just because it's a school, we have to have a special permit or application for that process.
It's the Eric Cotton, City of Tampa. It's the underlying zoning that's the issue. The underlying zoning of Blake High School is RM24, so it's a residential multifamily zoning district.
Okay.
Normally, like the, I'll use the Emily Arena, Raymond James, they all have either, CBD zoning or commercial intensive zoning. So the zoning categories already allow for that, for the alcohol sales.
Okay.
So they have to go get a special use still, but they already have the appropriate zoning. This location doesn't have the appropriate underlying zoning district.
And if I understand this correctly, there's no relation between the soccer team and the high school. Is that correct?
Except for the fact they're probably renting the space,
They're renting
correct?
the space just to play the games and, okay,
Correct.
makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Bowden.
Yeah, could you list you said city-owned properties?
Yes, sir.
So that could be a park or whatever?
Correct. If the city had a park that was 15 acres in size that had the ability to host a soccer game or a baseball field or whatever that was in the person requesting it was affiliated with a professional sports league, then yes. It's not related specifically to soccer. It would be any sport.
Understand that.
Yeah.
That's the question is it any city-owned property? So, and my question, the reason I asked the question is when you start thinking about a park, you're thinking about, an alcohol in the park. especially at certain times of the day, you know, you think about kids and things like that, and what is the control as far as, you know, someone being, intoxicated? That's my thought.
Well, again, this is specifically for during game times. So it'd be just like for a Bucks game or for a Lightning game, during those specific timeframes is when they would be able to sell.
Understand that, I mean, but they have a certain, a control, process, whereas in the park is pretty open, so that, and I guess that's a process that has to be worked out if this is actually approved.
That would all be part of the special use criteria once, if council were to actually adopt this come, next month. There's safeguards that will be built into the system for that, including insurance requirements and such.
All right, were there any other questions or discussion items, comments? Not seeing any. Oh, Commissioner Cardenas.
I guess where do the revenues go for this?
Pardon?
The revenue. Where does it?
I would imagine back to the team. I don't know. That's really not part of the reason for this request. I don't know where the revenue will go. Probably back to pay for rental from the school board and for profit for the facilities utilized, for the team itself.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? Not seeing any. I'll close the public comment and open it up to motions on this item from the commissioners. Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move that we find Code Text Amendment 24-6, Section 27132 and Section 27156 consistent with the Tampa Comprehensive Plan and forward on to Tampa City Council.
Second.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Buzza, a second to that consistency finding motion by Commissioner Kona. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners before we take our vote? Not seeing any, then we'll all signify their agreement by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we have 1 nay, Commissioner Bowden, and 7 ayes, everyone else. So it carries. All right, next up we have item 3B7. Yeah, 3B7, amending Chapter 17.5, Article 2 of the City of Tampa Code and Section 27-6 of the City of Tampa Land Development Code.
Hi, good afternoon. Dana Crosby Collier with the City Attorney's Office. This is an additional amendment. It's not a part of our January 2024 cycle, but we've taken this opportunity to bring this before you with our cycle. What we're setting out to do is codify the processes and procedures that are in Chapters 163 of Florida statutes relating to development agreements, and we're going to place them in 17.5 of our code. The reason it's before you today is that we will then add those development agreement procedures to Chapter 27-6 of the Land Development Code, so that the DA procedures and requirements become a part of our holistic land development code. It will require notice for development agreements prior to the first hearing. That's what we do for all of our land use hearings. It requires developers to submit an annual monitoring, requires a public hearing before City Council. This has been before City Council a couple of times already, and just is codifying those requirements in state law.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The request continues to streamline the development review process and ensure municipal codes remain sensitive to Tampa's changing trends and needs. And it also ensures the monitoring, timing, and availability of land, infrastructure, and public facilities to support new developments. And with that, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed Land Development Code text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
All right, we didn't have anyone sign up for this one, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for questions, comments, or discussions of this item. Not seeing a lot of excitement, I will then go on ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners. Commissioner Surya.
I'd like to forward the motion to approve City of Tampa Land Development Code text amendment, amending Chapter 17.5.
All right, Commissioner Bowden?
Second.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Surya. Second to that motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bowden. Any questions or comments, statements from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time, then we'll all signify their agreement by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the motion carries 7 ayes, and then Commissioner Buzza is out of the room, so. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, and that is all of our action stuff this evening. So we will move on to our briefings. And the first briefing will be 4A, HCCPA 24-3, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Local Functional Classification Map, and the presenter is Katrina Corcoran.
Good afternoon. I'm going to adjust this because the last presenters are definitely taller than me. Second. Good afternoon, Katrina Corcoran, Planning Commission staff. I'm here today to present on the Local Functional Classification Map. This request is publicly initiated and it is a text amendment, so it's an adoption of a currently non-adopted map. There are no policy changes as a part of this text amendment. If you're feeling deja vu, it's because this was previously in the January 2023 cycle. It was withdrawn due to Senate Bill 250, which prevented Hillsborough County from initiating or adopting amendments that were considered regulatory or burdensome. In this case, this map is considered regulatory. Some background, the Mobility Sections map series includes Map 7, the Local Functional Classification Map, which is again currently non-adopted. The graphic you can see here on the right is the previous map that they worked with from 2008. And in coordination with various stakeholders, Community and Infrastructure Planning updated this map. You may be wondering what functional classification is. So it's the group of roads to which a road belongs. So a list of typical roadway characteristics is considered, which includes posted speed, number of lanes, traffic generated, etc. The amount of mobility and access offered by different classifications varies based on type. So there are 4 main functional classes: principal arterial, arterial, collector, and local. Arterial roads generally provide the fastest method of travel but have the lowest accessibility, so they're designed with long distance travel in mind. Principal arterials include interstates and highways, and they typically have higher posted speeds. Collector roads are the second most common, and they're used as a connection between local roads and arterial roads. So they provide less mobility than arterials at lower speeds, but they also provide a balance between access and mobility. Local roads are the most common, but also the slowest for travel. They generally have high accessibility and connect to collectors and arterials, and they're typically not used for through traffic, and they typically, again, have lower posted speeds. So a road's functional classification can have an impact from a comprehensive plan or land development code standpoint. This includes allowing or directing certain land uses to be located on certain type of roadways. So for example, think of commercial locational criteria or encouraging higher density residential on arterial roadways, as well as LDC considerations for transportation safety and access. This slide shows you the local functional classification map. Again, this is a part of the Mobility Section Map series today. It's non-adopted. This would be adopted as a part of this amendment. I did want to note that we're currently coordinating with the jurisdictions because this has come back. As I mentioned, it was previously in the January 2023 cycle. So we're making sure that we coordinate with those jurisdictions, and there may be changes to this map as a part of that coordination at hearing. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I believe that staff from Community and Infrastructure Planning may be here as well. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions on this one? No, not seeing any. Then we'll thank you for the information. We'll move on to our next one. Item 4B, HCCPA 24-24 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, Greater Palm River Area Community Plan, and the presenter is Sophia Garantiva.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Just give me 1 minute. There are a lot of presentations. All right. Hello again, Sophia Garantiva, Planning Commission staff, here to present HCCPA 24-24, Greater Palm River Area Community Plan Update. A little bit of background, this is a publicly initiated text amendment. In September of 2022, the Board of County Commissioners asked staff to update the Greater Palm River Area Community Plan. This plan was originally adopted in 2008, and the boundaries generally include the Palm River, Tampa Bypass Canal to the north, US Highway 301 to the east, Tampa city limits to the west, and the limits of the Riverview Community Plan to the south, as you can see on the map. The community plan area also includes multiple established neighborhoods such as Palm River, Claremont City, and Progress Village. The adopted community plan also established a vision, 9 goals, and several strategies to meet those goals. So the community plan update timeline, the update process kicked off in the fall-winter of 2022 with the presentation of a community plan implementation status report, which was presented by county staff and the request, of course, by the BOCC to initiate the update. We started community engagement with open houses and began gathering data and coordinating with county departments. From 2023 to 2024, we continued community engagement with regularly scheduled stakeholder meetings, drafted documents and presented them as they were ready to the community, and continued to have meetings with county staff. In the spring and summer of 2024, we held the final community meetings, finalized policy, and initiated the comprehensive plan amendment process. We had numerous engagement opportunities throughout the process that were open to the public. Again, as mentioned, we had open houses, online engagement via surveys, project website, virtual meetings. We also had monthly office hours in the community. A Community Plan Advisory Committee, or CPAC, was also created. This was a voluntary group comprised of community members and stakeholders providing input on draft policies, which met monthly. Notices for community meetings were given through a combination of mailed postcards, emails, sign postings, which we found to be the most effective in that community, social media posts, and again on the project website. Staff also attended events in the community to bring awareness to the effort and gather input. Some of the key insights gathered from the engagement process were that there was a perceived opinion by the community that numerous adopted goals and strategies were not fully implemented, such as code enforcement and infrastructure improvements. There was a fear that the area's history and sense of community was being lost to new development and changing demographics. It was also expressed that the name of the community plan was a point of tension as it singles out one single neighborhood. There didn't appear to be any outright opposition to development, but there was a desire for balance between new development and the infrastructure demands of the existing development in the community. There's also a desire for better communication within the community between the different neighborhoods and with the community and the county. So as a result of this engagement and the input we received from the community and in collaboration with county staff, we are proposing 4 main changes to the Greater Palm River Area Community Plan. First being renaming the community plan to the Palm River Progress Village Community Plan to recognize the northern and southernmost neighborhoods of the plan boundary. We are also proposing updating the vision statement and the concept map to include the neighborhood names and reflect updates to the strategies and goals. Also, to help address the implementation concerns, we are proposing to combine related goals to focus efforts, going from 9 adopted goals to 5 proposed goals and reprioritizing them. We are also proposing to clarify strategies by relocating action items into a separate non-adopted report that will accompany the community plan while keeping many of the existing strategies in place. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? Not seeing any. We'll thank you for the information, and we will move on to our next agenda item. It is HCCPA 23-09 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 1005 North Kingsway Road, and the presenter is Bryn Dauphiné.
Hit it right there. Good afternoon, Bryn Dauphiné with the Planning Commission staff. I'm here to discuss HCCPA 23-09 1005 North Kingsway Road. This item was originally in the April 2023 cycle, was continued, and is back before you all today. This is a privately initiated small-scale amendment for one parcel located on approximately 14.47 acres. The applicant is requesting to go from residential 4 to community mixed-use 12. The site is located on the east side of the county. It is within the Seffner-Mango Community Plan as well as within the urban service area. As you can see on this map, the plan amendment site is in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of East Highway 92, East US Highway 92, and North Kingsway Road. Directly to the west, across North Kingsway Road, is Burnett Middle School, and to the north of the school is Higginbotham Park. Further in the northwest corner is I-4. South of the school are some light commercial uses. The amendment site is currently vacant and surrounded by residential uses to the north, east, and south. The site is currently designated as residential 4 with public quasi-public to the west, which is the school, the residential 1 in the north corner, and other residential 4 designations surrounding it. The blue line you see in the corner is the urban service boundary. Beyond the boundary, you will find some agricultural estate uses. The applicant is requesting to change the designation to Community Mixed Use 12. The existing residential 4 category allows for up to 57 dwelling units or 157,579 square feet. The proposed Community Mixed Use 12 designation would allow for up to 173 dwelling units or 315,146 square feet. Additionally, the proposed amendment would potentially allow for the consideration of commercial intensive and manufacturing uses under the CMU 12 designation. That concludes my presentation. I am available for any questions.
Thank you. I missed it real quick. Is that privately initiated, right?
Privately, yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments from the commissioners? Not seeing any. We'll thank you for the information.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next agenda item. Our next presentation is 4D, HCCPA 24-20, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 16011 North Nebraska Avenue, and the presenter is Alexis Myers.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 2420, located at 16011 North Nebraska Avenue. This is a small-scale, privately initiated map amendment that is approximately 2.11 acres. The applicant is proposing to change the future land use category from residential 4 to suburban mixed use 6. Here's the general location map. It is in the urban service area and within the limits of the Lutz Community Plan. It is also within the Chapman Manor neighborhood. Okay, now we have the aerial. The site is outlined in pink, and then the dotted line, the blue dotted line indicates the Tampa service area, while the blue solid line indicates the urban service area. The site is north of North Nebraska Avenue and Interstate 75, and then south of Hannah Road. It is also within the FEMA Flood Zone X and currently has light industrial uses on the site. There are also single-family uses to the north and east across I-75 and a group home and mobile home park to the west. Currently, the future land use designation of the site is residential 4. Other future land use categories shown in this map include residential 1 and residential 2 to the north and office commercial 20 to the south. Again, the applicant is requesting to change the future land use designation to suburban mixed use 6. Here we have the impacts. As far as the existing conditions, currently under Res 4, the site could consider 8 dwelling units or 175,000 square feet of non-residential uses. Oh, I apologize, let me go back. Under the proposed future land use designation of SMU 6, the applicant could possibly develop up to 12 dwelling units or 175,000 square feet of non-residential uses. The proposed amendment will result in an increase of density, and it will also introduce suburban scale commercial and residential uses. And this concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2420. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, were there any questions, comments from the commissioners? Not seeing any. We'll thank you for the presentation, the information, and we will move on to our next agenda item, 4E, HCCPA 24-21 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 9317 Gibsonton Drive, and the presenter is Jillian Massey.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Jillian Massey with your Planning Commission staff. I'll be briefing on HCCPA 24-21, which is 9317 Gibsonton Drive. This request is a privately initiated, small-scale map amendment. It's made up of 6 parcels that total approximately 11.94 acres. And the request is to change the land use designation of these parcels from suburban mixed-use 6 to community mixed-use 12. The location of this plan amendment request is in the southeastern portion of unincorporated Hillsborough County. It's part of the April 2024 cycle, located in the urban service area and within the limits of the Gibsonton Community Plan and South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. This is an aerial photo of the site outlined here in pink. It's located on Gibsonton Drive and bound by Old Gibsonton Drive to the north and Interstate 75 to the east. Surrounding uses mainly include single-family residential and the Alafaya River to the north, single-family to the west and southwest, I-75 to the east, and single-family further east. To the south, across Gibsonton Drive is light commercial and strip retail, including a large Walmart plaza, and further south is also single-family residential. The site is in the suburban mixed-use 6 land use category. It allows for consideration of residential uses, suburban scale neighborhood, commercial, office uses, research corporate park uses, light industrial, and mixed-use projects. Neighborhood commercial uses are subject to locational criteria. Surrounding land use categories include suburban mixed-use 6 to the north and south, residential 4 to the west, and residential 6 to the southwest. There is one pocket of community mixed-use 12 in the northeast quadrant of I-75 and Gibsonton Drive. The request is to change the site to community mixed-use 12, which allows consideration of the same uses as suburban mixed-use 6, but introduces consideration of community-scale retail commercial. And in this category, commercial uses are not subject to locational criteria. This slide outlines the potential impacts of the requested land use change. Currently, under the suburban mixed-use 6, the site can be considered for up to 71 dwelling units or approximately 260,000 square feet of non-residential uses. The floor area ratio in this category ranges from 0.25 to 0.50, depending on the proposed use, and is also subject to locational criteria. The change to community mixed-use 12 would allow for consideration of up to 143 dwelling units or approximately 260,000 square feet of non-residential uses. And this proposed amendment would increase the potential residential density and introduce consideration of community scale retail commercial uses, excuse me. This concludes the briefing on this item, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Not seeing any excitement, then we'll thank you for the presentation and information. We'll move on to our next agenda item, 4F, HCCPA 24-22, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 421 West Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and the presenter is Carly Llanos.
Carly Llanos for Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 24-22. It's located at 421 West Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. This is a privately initiated small-scale comprehensive plan amendment on 4.25 acres in size. The request is going from residential 6 to suburban mixed-use 6. The general location of the property, it's located within the urban service area within the Sefner Mango Community Plan, and it's also part of the April 2024 cycle. And here on your screen, you'll see an aerial map. To the north, you'll have 2-family, also single-family uses. Over to the east, you'll have some light industrial uses, which are developed with a mini storage. Over to the southeast, you have some heavy and light commercial uses. And then over to the west, you do have a mixture of agricultural uses, more single-family. And to the south, you do have quasi-public institutional uses. And then you also have some heavy commercial uses as well. Now, the adopted future land use is residential 6, as previously mentioned. It allows you up to 6 dwelling units an acre or 0.25 floor area ratio. The suburban mixed use 6 allows you basically the same amount of density, 6 dwelling units an acre. It changes a little bit when it comes to non-residential. So you do have a cap of either 0.35 floor area ratio for office uses, and then you can achieve up to 0.50 FAR for light industrial uses. Now, under the existing, you can achieve up to 25 dwelling units or 46,000 square feet of non-residential use. Under the proposed, again, you get 25 dwelling units or 92,000 maximum of non-residential use, and that depends on the use. Overall, what you're going to see is just an increase in terms of the intensity by changing it to the SMU category. But other than that, that's basically what I have. So I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this one? Not seeing any. We'll thank you for the information, and we'll move on to our next agenda item, 4G, HCCPA 24-25, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 1911 Rebecca Road, and the presenter is Melissa Dickens.
There we go. All right. Good afternoon, Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. This is another amendment privately initiated to the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, HCCPA 24-25, and it's at 1911 Rebecca Road. This is, again, privately initiated, small scale. It's approximately 2.14 acres, and the request is to go from residential 1 to residential 2. This map depicts the general location of the proposed amendment. It is more in the northern northwest area of the county. It's in the rural area, and it's also part of the Lutz Community Plan. This is an aerial showing the proposed property amendment site in pink. There are a number of rural residential uses that surround the site. The site itself does have heavy wetlands, and it is also in flood zone A. The adopted future land use map is shown here on the screen. Currently, the site is designated residential 1. You can see that there is a great deal of residential 1 surrounding the site to the northeast and west, and then residential 2 to the south. And then here's the proposed future land use map if this amendment were to be adopted. This would modify the site to residential 2, and residential 2 is quite similar to residential 1, except there is the increase in density allowing additional dwelling units per acre. So 2 dwelling units per acre instead of 1, and then the FAR that is possible is the same. So for impacts, right now, the site could get 2 dwelling units, approximately 23,304 square feet. Under the proposed plan amendment, the potential development would be 4 units, and then the same square feet. Those square footages are required to meet commercial locational criteria as well. And in terms of impacts, we're still evaluating them, but the proposed amendment would result in an increase in density in the rural area. And I also do want to note that these maximums here don't account for the application of the environmentally sensitive lands credit that is part of the future land use section. This concludes my briefing. I'm available if there are questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the? Nope. Not seeing any. Well, thank you for the information and move on to our next agenda item. 4H, HCCPA 23-15, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Energy Industrial Park, Secondary Uses. And the presenter is Melissa Leinhardt.
Good afternoon. A lot of presentations in that folder. I'm Melissa Leinhardt for the record, Planning Commission staff. I'm here today to present to you HCCPA 2315, which is Energy Industrial Park and Secondary Uses. This is a privately initiated plan amendment that applies to 1 geographical area in unincorporated Hillsborough County. Specifically, the text applies to approximately 3,000 acres on the east side of the county, just south of State Road 60. The applicant is requesting to modify existing adopted language under the Energy Industrial Park section of the future land use element that pertains specifically to this area. This request is part of the April 2024 cycle of plan amendments. The site is located in the urban service area near the eastern edge. It is not located within the limits of a community plan. The site is bordered generally by State Road 60 on the north, Dover Road on the west, Turkey Creek Road on the east, and then Durant Road on the south. The Energy Industrial Park Future Land Use category is a unique category in that it applies to one specific geographical area of the county. This category, along with the text, supports the category's vision and contains the requirements for the Energy Industrial Park. It was also created through a privately initiated text amendment back in 2010. The policies were written based upon the topography of the site at the time, as well as the available energy production technology at the time. In 2010, there was a large public outreach effort for this Energy Industrial Park language, and it was heavily vetted with both the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners at that time. In 2022, there was a privately initiated text amendment that modified the language to allow for one energy producing output rather than the two that was originally approved in 2010. That was so long as the output was doubled to achieve the vision of the Energy Industrial Park. And those outputs are outlined in the certified site plan and the conditions of approval for the rezoning, which was also approved in 2010. That amendment was approved in 2022 and it is in effect today. Regarding the impacts, the current language states that all other uses beyond the energy producing uses, such as commercial, industrial, and office uses, those are ancillary, and the focus is really on the renewable energy production. The current language also limits the ancillary industrial, commercial, and office uses to a specific spot within the Energy Industrial Park, and that's generally in 700 acres in the northwest portion of the site. The current language also limits direct access to major arterial roadways, which in this case would be State Road 60. The proposed language, again privately initiated, would allow up to 30% of the allowable commercial, office, and industrial uses and the square footage prior to any renewable energy producing uses. Today, those would be required first. The proposed language would also eliminate language specifying where it would have to occur. The commercial, office, and industrial, that 700 acres would be deleted. And so it would be allowed conceivably anywhere within the site once the rezoning is modified. And it would also allow direct access onto Turkey Creek Road. That concludes my presentation. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, discussion items from the commissioners? No? All right. Well, thank you for the information. Oh, wait, Commissioner Soria, sorry.
Just had a question. On the document, there's a lot of blue corrections or deletion. Is that by the private entity, or is
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes, the red line that was in the packet, that's produced by the private applicant, McNeil Engineering.
Okay.
So that's what they're proposing as part of this privately initiated text amendment.
Okay. And the process would be the staff will look into it and make changes as necessary, or just?
Yes, we will see you back on July 8th
Okay.
with this for a public hearing at the Planning Commission, and then it subsequently will go to the board 2 times because it is a text amendment, so we'll go to a transmittal hearing at the board as well as an adoption hearing at the board if it's transmitted.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
If I could just expand on that, staff generally will not recommend a lot of changes to what the applicant has made unless there's something, kind of minor that we think would make it consistent with the comprehensive plan. But our review is what they proposed consistent or inconsistent. Now, certainly we give applicants a lot of feedback throughout the process and hope that they take that and incorporate the changes themselves. But we try, if the private applicant wants to propose something, even if we don't think it's a good idea, they're allowed to do that.
Okay.
So,
Sounds
yeah.
good. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right. Are there any other questions on this item from the commissioners? Not seeing any. Well, thank you. And we will move on to our next agenda item. 4I, HCCPA 24-07, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment 5711 Bishop Road, USA Extension, and the presenter is Carly Llanos.
All right, Carly Llanos with Planning Commission staff. Before you, you'll be seeing approximately 8 plan amendments that are coming before you in this briefing. Now, those 8 plan amendments were submitted in the January 2024 cycle. They were initiated as private text amendments to expand the urban service area boundary. They do each have a companion future land use map change. And overall, you have 6 of them that are within the vicinity of each other. They're like touching borders. And then there's 2 other ones that are located a little bit further up north, but overall it's within the same general vicinity. So the first one before you is HCCPA 24-07. It's located at 5711 Bishop Road, and this is to expand the urban service boundary. So again, this is privately initiated, and because our procedures manual doesn't process this normally as a future land use map amendment, it's processed as the text amendment. So this is why we had to only receive it either in the January cycle or the July cycle, and then process it a little bit differently than normal. Again, this is 575 acres. They're expanding it, and this is associated with HCCPA 23-19, which was submitted in the October of 2023 cycle last year. Now, in front of you, you have the aerial map. These are the 3 potential properties that are asking to expand that urban service boundary, and we'll go over each of them as the cases go on. So the first one you'll see is highlighted right in the middle. It's highlighted in yellow, and it's right off of County Road 579. It has some access off of Bishop Road, and this is what you see. And that's it. I'm going to pass it over to Alexis because she's going to go over the future land use map that's companion to this one.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff. Here to present HCCPA 2319, located at 5711 Bishop Road. Like Carla said, this is a privately initiated plan amendment that is large in scale and 575 acres. I have the wrong one on the PowerPoint. Sorry about that. Currently, the future land use designation is Waimama Village Residential 2, and the applicant is requesting to change the future land use designation to Residential 4. Here is the general location map. It is within the urban service area, the rural service area, and this amendment is within the limits of the Waimama Village and South Shore Area-Wide Systems Community Plans. It is located east of Highway 301 and West Lake Drive, west of County Road 579, and south of Bishop Road and State Road 674. Here is an area of the site. The site is outlined in pink, and the blue line indicates the urban service area boundary. The site currently has agricultural and vacant land. The site also has wetlands, significant wildlife, and is also in the FEMA flood zone AE. There are single-family uses and agricultural to the west, northwest, and southwest. And there's also public, quasi-public institutional uses and agricultural to the east, northeast, and southeast. Currently, the future land use designation of the site is Waimama Village Residential 2. Other future land use designations shown in this map include natural preservation to the east and south, and Residential 4 and Residential 6, which are just within the urban service area to the north. Again, the applicant is proposing to change the future land use designation to Residential 4. Next, we have the impacts. As far as the existing conditions, currently under WVR2, the site could consider up to 81 dwelling units, or 4,445,951.4 square feet of non-residential uses. Standalone commercial uses are subject to commercial locational criteria and be limited to 40,000 square feet. Under the proposed future land use designation of Residential 4, the applicant could possibly develop up to 1,633 units, or 4,445,951.4 square feet of non-residential uses. These numbers also depend on the wetland acreage. Overall, the proposed amendment will result in an increase of density, and it will also introduce suburban scale commercial and residential while eliminating community benefits. And this concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2319. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, so we just got a text amendment and a map amendment. So does anybody have questions on either of the two? Not at this point in time. All right, so we'll thank you, and we'll move on to the next pair, I guess. K and L, I'll let you guys read them all off.
All right, Carly Llanos with Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 24-09. This property is located off of Saffold Road and County Road 579. And this is a privately initiated comprehensive plan text amendment on 600 acres to expand the urban service boundary. This does have a companion future land use map amendment that will be presented by Alexis Myers under HCCPA 24-08. Now, the aerial map before you, you'll see that the property that we're referring to is the one located to the further south. It's right off of Saffold Road, and it's highlighted in yellow. And that's it. I'll stand for any questions. Okay, that's one.
Okay. Good afternoon. Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff again. Here to present HCCPA 2408, located at Saffold Road and County Road 579. This is a privately initiated plan amendment that is large in scale and approximately 638 acres. Currently, the future land use designation is Wamama Village Residential 2, and the applicant is requesting to change the future land use designation to Residential 4. Here's the general location map. Again, it is within the rural service area, and it falls within the limits of the Wamama Village and South Shore Area Wide Systems community plans. It is also west of County Road 579 and north of Saffold Road. Here is an aerial of the site. Again, the site is outlined in pink, and the blue line indicates the urban service area boundary. This site currently has agricultural and single-family uses. The site also has wetlands, significant wildlife, and is also in the FEMA flood zone AE. There are also agricultural uses to the east and west and south, and then single-family uses are to the southwest. Currently, the future land use designation of the site is Wamama Village Residential 2. Other future land use designations shown in this map include the natural preservation to the east and south, and then we have Residential 4 and 6, which are just within the urban service area to the north. The applicant, again, is proposing to change the future land use designation to Residential 4. Next, we have the impacts. Overall, the proposed amendment will result in an increase of density and will also introduce suburban scaled commercial and residential while eliminating community benefits. And this concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2408.
All right, thank you very much. And we got another pair here of plan text amendment and plan map amendment. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts going into this before we see it again? Not seeing any, then we'll thank you for the information. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is 4M, HCCPA 24-11 Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, 15540 Westlake Drive, another USA extension. The presenter is Andrea Pappinger. Are you going to do both of them together?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Andrea Pappinger, Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 2411, 15540 Westlake Drive, Urban Service Area Extension. This is a privately initiated text amendment. It's an expansion of the urban service area by 541.81 acres. And there's also an associated map amendment with this application, which you'll see in the next presentation, HCCPA 2410. So this is an aerial of the subject site. It is further north than the previous urban service area extension applications that you just saw. The subject site is east of Westlake Drive and south of County Road 672. There is a portion of the site that's indicated on the map that is natural preservation, future land use category, and it's not included within this application. And the blue line on the aerial shows the existing urban service area boundary. So that concludes my presentation for CPA 2411. Available for any questions, or I can keep going to the next map. All right, once again, Andrea Pappinger, Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 24-10, 15540 Westlake Drive. So this is a privately initiated regular map amendment. The site is 551.24 acres. The request is to go from Wamama Village Residential 2 and Residential Plan 2 to the Residential 4 future land use category. So the site is in the southwestern portion of the county. It's in the rural area, and the site is within the Wamama Village Community Plan and the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. So this is an aerial of the subject site. You'll notice that this is slightly different from the text amendment. The westernmost portion of the site is within the urban service area boundary, but it is Wamama Village Residential 2. So it is part of the map amendment application to change to Residential 4, but it's not part of the text amendment because it's already in the urban service area boundary today. So again, the site is east of Westlake Drive and south of County Road 672, and natural preservation is not included within the map amendment. And the portion, please note that the briefing packet maps are incorrect. The portion that is associated with the map amendment is not on there, which is the westernmost portion, so we will be updating those for the public hearing packets. So the adopted future land use map for the subject site, the adopted future land use is Wamama Village Residential 2, and then there is a small portion of residential RP2, so that's 0.04 acres. To the north and east of the site are the natural preservation and residential plan 2 categories. Further north is a small pocket of office commercial 20. To the south and west of the site is the Wamama Village Residential 2, and then west of the site, beyond where the urban service area boundary is Residential 4. So the proposal before you today is to change to the Residential 4 future land use category, not including the natural preservation portion. So for the impacts, the existing WVR2 and RP2 categories allow for a maximum of 1,102 dwelling units. Maximum FAR is a 0.25 or approximately 6,003,003 square feet. However, the RP2 category does allow up to a 0.35 if utilizing the planned village concept. Please note that the plan amendment site is not in the downtown east area, so it's not eligible for commercial uses under the existing WVR2. Moving to Residential 4 would increase the density up to 2,204 units, and the FAR would remain at a 0.25. Proposed amendment, if approved, would remove the Wamama Village Residential 2 commercial square footage limitation for standalone uses and the community commercial land use that's in the Residential Plan 2 category. That concludes my presentations. I'm available for any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions on these two, the plan text amendment or the plan map amendment? I'm not seeing anyone shaking their head anything but no, so we'll thank you for the information and we'll move on to the last two here.
Again, Carla Llanos with Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 24-13, North Bishop Road and County Road 579. It's a privately initiated comprehensive plan text amendment on 505 acres to expand the urban service boundary. This plan amendment is associated with the future land use map change under HCCPA 24-12. That's a typo. I apologize. So the last property of the area that we are referring to in the urban service boundary extension is the northernmost property. It's the one highlighted in yellow. This one's a little bit closer to Westlake Drive and off of Bishop Road. And then I'll pass it over to Alexis so she can dive into the map.
Good afternoon, Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff, here to present HCCPA 2412, located at North Bishop Road and County Road 579. This is a privately initiated plan amendment that is large in scale and approximately 505 acres. Currently, the future land use designation are Wamama Village Residential 2 and Natural Preservation, and the applicant is requesting to change the future land use designation to Residential 4. Here we have the general location map. This amendment is within the rural service area. It also falls within the limits of the Wamama Village and South Shore Area-Wide Systems community plans. It is south of Bishop Road and west of County Road 579. Here we have the aerial. The site is outlined in pink, and the blue line indicates the urban service area boundary. There is agriculture on the site as well as to the south. The site also has wetlands, significant wildlife, and is also in the FEMA flood zone AE. There's also single-family uses to the west. Currently, the future land use designation of the site is Waimama Village Residential 2 and Natural Preservation. Other future land use designations shown in this map include Residential 4 and Residential 6, which are just within the limits, just within the urban service area to the north. Again, the applicant is proposing to change the future land use designation to Residential 4. Next, we have the impacts. Overall, the proposed amendment will result in an increase of density, and it will also introduce suburban scale commercial and residential while eliminating community benefits. And this concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2412. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions on these two, the text amendment or the map amendment? Commissioners, not seeing any. We will thank you both for your information, presentations, and move on to our next agenda item, which is number 5, the Executive Director's Report. And the presenter is Melissa Zornita.
Good afternoon, Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. At your seat, you've got a copy of my report. A couple of sort of big categories of items that we've been working on that I wanted to highlight. First, we've been working very closely with the City of Tampa on their update of their future land use element. The draft is moving forward really nicely. We've got a memo that is going to City Council as part of their workshop on June 27th that responds to it, shows them how we have responded to a number of things that they have asked for in that update. Then we will get their direction, I'm sure, on that, and then incorporate any of those changes and be looking at having some outreach on the draft in August. Usually, probably once school has started back and people are not on vacation as much anymore. Happy on how that is progressing, and it's been a great collaboration with the City of Tampa team. We also have been really pleased that the City of Tampa has started off their effort to update the Land Development Code. They have a major project to reform the Land Development Code holistically, and they included us in their round of kickoff meetings at the end of May that they've had with their consultant that they've brought on board. So I'm happy to see that they're actively looking at how to implement the updated comprehensive plan very quickly with updated land development code. We've been working on the expansion of the urban service area, which you just heard about 4 requests that were privately initiated to expand the urban service area. But in addition to that, as I've mentioned, I think at a previous meeting, the Board of County Commissioners has asked us to look proactively at expanding the urban service area to bring in all of the Waimama Village Residential 2. This has 4 parcels of that have come forward independent of that. And then also all of the area designated as RP2 in Balm. So we worked with county administration on a memo that went to the Board of County Commissioners last week, sort of outlining the steps that would need to be taken in that process. There's quite a bit of staff time on Planning Commission staff's part, but also the other county agencies in reviewing these 4 independent requests. And they kind of are bringing to light some of the potential things that we're going to have to deal with as we bring in the additional property. So those are on track to come forward first. They will be at your July 29th public hearing. And then we're anticipating that we will do some outreach with the other property owners who are beyond those 4 properties. We need to let them know that they're being considered to be brought into the urban service area, that their land use is potentially going to change, get some input from all of them, and then bring forward an amendment for the larger areas, probably for hearing after the first of the year. And Commissioner Kress.
Thank you. It feels like the timing is off with the privately initiated amendments, or It's just
Yes.
You have to respond, I guess, if they're asking.
We do, certainly, we have made all of the privately initiated amendments aware that there would be this process. I think most of them want to move forward a little quicker than staff is able to, given that we need to inform all of the property owners who would be affected. And, some of those property owners may not want to come into the urban service area, and then we've got to figure that out. So there are a number of things that would be involved in staff's initiated amendment that by their going forward, they're kind of able to move faster around. But certainly we gave them the option that if they wanted to move into the public process, they could. We had, at the week of Memorial Day, we had our Future Leaders in Planning program. We had the most students participate that we've ever had. We had 26 students in this year's group. A big thank you to Commissioner Orton, Commissioner Kress, and Commissioner Joseph for participating in that and helping with different aspects of it. It really was a great week. Once again, it was extremely hot. So we are open to suggestions of places that we could go and things we could teach them that are indoors next year. We actually had a staff debriefing on it, and there's a lot of interest in looking at making it a week that is 5 days instead of 4 days. So we're going to look and see whether or not that's feasible. So anyway, thank you for all the great support on that again this year. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that in July, we do have 2 public hearings. As you just heard, there were 16 plan amendments that would have kept you all here all night if we'd done it all in one meeting. So we have split them up on July 8th. There will be most of the ones that were the couple that were publicly initiated, so the local functional classification, the Palm River Community Plan, a couple of the smaller map amendments, and then the most controversial item that night will be the Energy Industrial Park. We get multiple emails daily about that one. So your packet will be quite large for that evening because we have gotten so much public comment on that item. On July 29th, we do have a couple of the map amendments that are not related to the urban service area expansion, but then we have all 8 of the urban service area expansion text and map amendments. And we hope to present them similar to how we did today and have public comment once on both items, because most people kind of intertwine the issues together. So that's the plan going forward. Appreciate your all's attendance at an extra meeting next month. Lastly, just some updates on some of the comprehensive plan amendments. We had an amendment in Plant City that was adopted by the Plant City Commission. It had been around for a while. It was 2301 on South Baptist Church Road, south of Alexander Street, and that was approved by the City Commission. In the City of Tampa, they have taken action on the Memorial Park Cemetery and approved that amendment. They also approved the Ybor Harbor, which was a plan amendment from 2022. And you will see at I believe at next month's meeting, we will be bringing forward some changes to the Plan Amendment Procedures Manual, and one of those requested by the City of Tampa is that we have a time limit in which the item must be heard after you all have made a recommendation, because if your recommendation was made in 2022 and it's finally getting adopted in 2024, there's quite a bit that could have changed, including plan policies could have changed in that intervening time. And so we'd like to see if we could get those actions a bit closer together. Then on last Thursday night, the county adopted 5 of the goals of the county's future land use element. They had previously asked us to take another look at Goal 4 and Goal 6. Those will be coming back to them in August. We've actually had some virtual public meetings on that in the last week. At last Thursday's hearing, they continued goal number 2, specifically because they had a concern about the minimum density policy that is applied within the urban service area. That policy's been in place since 2008 and calls for properties generally to be built at a density of 75% of the land use category. The idea being trying to maximize the land in the urban service area. In 2008, we had quite a bit of data about how underutilized the land was in the urban service area, and there was quite a bit of expense being put into the infrastructure to serve that, and so we were trying to get the densities closer to what the plan called for. There currently are a number of exceptions to that in terms of if it's not compatible, there are environmental issues in the coastal high hazard area, there's not the infrastructure to support the density. The county commission on Thursday evening asked, well, they had some back and forth about whether to delete the policy, whether it was still needed, whether to change the policy, and ultimately they ended up continuing the item to have staff come up with a solution. So we'll be working on that and bring that back to them in August. And that concludes my report, I believe.
All right. Were there any other questions or discussion items? Commissioners, not seeing any, then we will thank you for the information. We will move on to our next agenda item. Item number 6, business, other business. Chair's business, I have none. Old business, I don't believe there is any. New business, does anyone have any? Nope. All right, committee reports. Any committee reports? All right, not seeing any, then that is the end of this meeting. We will be back at 5:30 for the public hearings. So at 4:23, this meeting's adjourned. 4:24, meeting adjourned.